Oh, good morning. Looking out at a sunny spring morning here in Hawke's Bay before I head off to the U.S. for a couple weeks of sales and events. I should post this before or probably right around the time we're doing 3 nights in a row in Philadelphia area. One in Northern Liberties at Heritage. Check that out online. Probably be some spots open for that. And then a really nice dinner on Wednesday, the 20th. 20th of September at Savona on the main line and outside of Philadelphia, and then the main line, very posh area outside of Philly, and then 21st, bringing it all back home to McCrossen's Tavern. There might be some tables outside. I hear it's pretty much fully booked, but it's a party. Come join. At this stage, don't expect to get a table unless it's a bit later, but we'll be debuting a bunch of wines there, as well as including the Viognier and the Rosé. Might get some sneak peeks of the Viognier and some of the events before, but that, and then I'm going to have a cheeky bottle of the Testify Red, which is a new premium Malbec that we're going to release later in the year, but I'll have a sneak peek of that. But anyway, Philly should be really fun. I'll be up in New York the week before, popping around, but no events planned up there. Just really focused on getting the wine to the people, into some restaurants and some wine shops and stuff. So anyway, I don't want to keep it too long, this intro today. I'm sure you're all happy to hear that. As usual, I'll just say visit decibelwines.com. Use the promo code DBPodcast to get 10% off any of your orders. What else? Australia, keep an eye out. We've got a distributor there. Things are looking really promising for that. All the wines are going to go across the ditch into Australia, so starting in Sydney and spreading from there. But anyway, on to the podcast we did today. I don't want to, again, intro too long because we spoke for about an hour. I really got into it with Hayden Penny, talking about organics and state of the industry here in Hawke's Bay, and really trying to be progressive. It was just a great conversation. He's a friend, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things, and but he's a curious guy, as I am, and it was just a really good conversation. A little bit about Hayden is you can check out just supernatural wines, as he pointed out on his in the conversation. You can find the wines throughout America now online. They've got a beautiful tasting room up in Tiawanga. But Hayden also does make wines. He helps out Aunt Mackenzie quite a bit. So if you see some of those Aunt Mackenzie wines out there, and which by default means he helps out with those Askern wines, which they just won a big aromatic award. No surprise, because Aunt and Hayden are involved, that you're going to see an uptick in those wines as well. But his main production is with Supernatural Wines and taking care of that vineyard, which is a organic vineyard here in Hawke's Bay. Gorgeous little spot. And again, a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll talk soon. I started looking at some of the previous episodes I did to revisit, and you were definitely, it's probably you and Gordon, who Gordon I talked to during the Giblet Gravels one, that I've gotten to know a lot better since then. And then, but you, unique to Gordon, have changed a lot that you were doing. First of all, I didn't know you that much. It was everything we talked about was where you come from, where all your experience and everything. But so much has happened since then with some really interesting projects you're part of now. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, man, wanted to sit down and see how you're doing. Cool. On the record.
The record, yeah, no, it's good for you.
Officially, So what is going on?
Oh, what's going on at the moment? Lots of stuff. Main project now is the Supernatural Wine Company. So 8 hectares up in the Tukituk Valley, growing organically up there. And, yeah, things there are going really well. It's... We were one of the first in New Zealand to start producing orange wines. Mm-hmm. And initially in 2013 when we started, we were, I don't know, we might even still be the largest producer of orange wines in the country. So that's been really fun. That sort of came about just through the very, very small organic community in Hawke's Bay.
Yes, which we will get to.
Yeah, and... they approached me to make some wines in 2013, and I had been in Italy previously while I was at EIT and was introduced to the style, and they were keen to go down that route, and it just seemed really exciting. And
what do you think outside of, as it relates to skin fermented and orange wines, the difference between Italian and New Zealand? I mean, obviously we have more... Some would say brighter fruit here, and do you think that expresses itself more, or lends itself more towards that style?
Yeah, well, when we sort of came up with the idea, we had both tasted these wines, and they're really hit and miss. You can get some absolutely stunning ones, and you can get some really bad ones.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do is to give a true expression of sight in the cleanest, clearest possible way that we could. So, to me, a skin-fermented wine is the pinnacle of goodness from the land. If you think of vegetable skin or something like that holds all the goodness, you have to think about the grape the same. And you extract that through the red wine making process. But with white wines in general, you miss out on it. So, I think in New Zealand we just get a cleaner, I guess, expression through these wines. I mean, you look at the Georgian and the northern Italian wines that are in this style, and, the vines are 150, 200 years old.
It's a different story.
We're not in that ballpark. But what we're trying to do is show a really clean version, New Zealand version of that style of wine.
And which style? What are you guys doing? I'm pretty sure I know, but just for the people listening.
So we're doing 4 different Semyon Blancs. So we do the Supernatural,
awesome.
which is I guess our most commercial style of wine. It spends a little bit of time on skins pre-press, but then after that it's sort of off its skins before it starts fermenting. Then we do a skin fermented Semyon Blanc, which gets a couple of weeks on skins and then spends the rest of its life in stainless steel and gets a little bit of sulphur before it's bottled. And then we do a skin fermented Sauvignon.
Hold on, we got to go over the names though, because the names are cool.
The names are cool. So that one that gets a little bit of sulphur is called Green Glow.
Green Glow, yeah.
So the green from the Semyon Blanc grape and the glow from the glow of the wine that you get from that skin contact. And then we do another skin fermented Semyon Blanc, which is aged in barrel, and that goes to bottle with no sulphur.
Is that all neutral oak or something?
Yeah, just old oak.
Yeah.
And we call that minus 220, 220 being the preservative number for sulphur dioxide. So minus 220, no sulphur dioxide, that sort of play on it. So that's been really cool. We didn't make that this year just because that needs pretty exquisite grapes to... in fact, we didn't make any of the skin fermented wines this year just due to the season. It's one of those things that if you're going to leave it on the skins for an extended period of time, they need to be in
clean
good condition.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, which we made for the first time this year, is the Supernet, which is our pet nat. so a natural sparkling Semyon Blanc. So that's just bottled under crown cap at 15 grams per litre, and the ferment finishes in the bottle to give it its fizz.
I've done that by accident before. Well, not by accident, but not by choice, I should say.
Yeah.
I had to leave for harvest, a sales trip and then harvest, and it wasn't quite finished yet.
Yeah.
So I just actually, right before you got here, I gave some to one of the vineyard guys over at Paratua that I still had left. He's like, "Oh, that fizzy one. My wife really likes that one."
Yeah, and it's been a big hit. We put it out to our international distribution network, and we only did 1,500 litres of it. So, what's that?
170 cases or something.
Yeah, and we sold. We got orders for about 3 times that.
Yeah, I can
internationally.
imagine.
So just with a bit of social media around our launch with our distributor and bits and pieces like that, Stephen Wong from Wellington wrote a little piece for us about what he thought about it, and we sent that out to our distributors, and it's gone. So
good. That's a good thing.
We're considering we only harvested it in March.
That's good for the cash flow.
It's great.
So that's a rare thing in wine.
I mean, it's the hot thing in the natural wine movement at the moment is the pet nats. So
I think it's fun and cool and like I think even probably for those people that are less educated or don't care or aren't into it, that's probably a really easy one to just let them get into and oh, sure, sparkling wine,
Yeah, I mean the cloudiness freaks them out sometimes because it is, it's like a bottle aged beer. It's all the lees are from the ferment are still in the bottle and things, but it's just a really fun, easy drinking. It's only 11.5%.
Yeah, it's great.
So it's on the deck.
It's not going to make it to summer then.
Yeah, well,
it's like a late winter drink. You have to.
Yeah,
but I suppose you don't want to wait to release it either if they're chomping at the bit for it.
Yeah, and I mean our New Zealand distributor has it.
Oh,
you know, it's just that we don't have any more to sell to anyone else.
Oh, that's cool
because it's all been spoken for.
So if you're, sashaying from cafe and bar in Auckland, you might be able to get a glass of this somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Keep an eye out for it.
Totally, yeah. On the website, there's a list of all the stockists. So, and if not, you can. I think the public still can buy direct from Great Little Vineyards in Auckland as well.
Yeah.
So check them out online. And back to the styles of wines we do. We also do a Pinot Gris, so a skin fermented Pinot Gris. So it's pink in colour, and made similar to our Green Glow, and that one's called Spooklight.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
So it's a pretty cool wine, and named after a unexplained light phenomenon in the States somewhere. They see this light at the end of the road.
I hope it's not the South, because this could be very un-PC. I don't know if you know some old derogatory things. But I'll leave that one alone for now.
Yeah. We won't go there. But so this light's been is called the Spooklight.
Yeah,
and
I think Greg may have mentioned it to me. That's somewhere up in Minnesota or
I think
Minnesota.
And it's and the colour is just similar to the colour that we get in the bottle. So that's why staying with our supernatural theme, we went with that one. So those are the wines we do, and with this year being as tough as it was, we've also now released a slightly lower priced Semyon Blanc and Pinot Gris under our Pacific Potion label.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just sort of trying to get more into that glass pour sort of price model.
Yeah, I think what's cool about and I probably would have been happy to even sit down with Greg. So we'll get to that in a second, but. Well, we can talk about it now, actually. I think it's really cool what you two guys have going on, and that you have somebody you work with who is out there in the market and, part of the story and helping sell it. But one of the really cool things that I think you guys do that I like to do is, see what happens and, don't be scared to, release something different. And, every year we have to make at least these wines and this, and the market and the wine consumer changes, evolve so quickly, especially if you guys aren't making a lot of wine.
No.
You might as well just try to make something that's going to sell and then people are going to enjoy, and you're honest about it. You're like, hey, this year we couldn't do it, so we're going to give you this other thing that's really cool,
Yeah, and the authenticity in what we're doing is a really important part of what we do. We don't want to put a skin fermented Pinot Gris on the shelf that we're not happy with and we can't stand next to. So we just looked at, okay, this is the season. Every grower, regardless of what they're growing, fights Mother Nature. You can't control her. She's rolled this dice, and we're just going to run with that. And we spoke to our distributors before we harvested and said, look, this is what we think we're going to do stylistically. Where do we need these wines to sit at this price point in this market, blah, 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 and got feedback on things like residual sugar.
You guys are actually running a business here.
Yeah, and there's just no room for holding stock in a company our size. Holding stock kills you.
Yeah,
and it was really important to make these wines that we could sell through, in a reasonable amount of time. So we needed to start. Instead of starting at the vineyard, we needed to start at the other end, at the market end, and work our way backwards. Yeah. So both of those Pacific Potion wines are 11 to 11.5% alcohol. So just nice, lightweight.
Yeah, you can't be afraid to do that. I had to do that in 13 with Savvy as well. It's like, if it's a good wine, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, and I mean that they are really good wines. They're not going to light the world up. But they're really nice wines that just fit really nicely into that glass pour market.
I think there's something to be learned too from, I don't know if it's like, if you could say show business, or like the one thing I see with maybe like stand-up comedians, or definitely in the music industry though, is where I kind of learned it, that it's not, it's obviously good to change pace and put out different pieces, you say this is our art, or it's something different in different years, but it's also like, it's not the worst thing to go away for a little while, like to just step back a little bit and go like, all right, we've been releasing this one, we're going to step back for a few months and then come out hard with something new and different, and then the next season you come back with that, oh yeah, that was that wine I really liked a year ago or 2 years ago, and it just provides, it adds a little excitement to the brand,
Yeah, and the true definition of terroir or turanga waiwai is to express what your site
gives you
provides.
yeah.
And we could have brought those grapes in and added some sugar and fattened them up a bit and done this and done that to it, but you lose your story.
Yeah,
you lose your story when every year they taste the same. It's like there's no such thing as the same season anymore.
No.
And part of what we do is to try and show that every wine has a story. And this is why we made these wines, because this and that happened, and this year we did these ones, and because of this, and this, and it's a really important part of what we do in that sort of natural, organic sort of sector. Is we have to be true to the land, and we can't zhuzh these wines up to make them look like something that they're not.
There's no point. Yeah,
it's not.
That said about not holding stock, do you foresee reds down the road for that range, or?
Look, we'd love to,
yeah.
But on our current site, up on the heavy clays and things, it's just not. If you had your, I suppose my question more is even all things, considered, what would be your, or what varietal you think would go, or style wine would you love to make in the, I don't know, supernatural range or whatever? I think something like a sort of like a fleshy Cabernet Franc from the Bridgepower Triangle that doesn't see any wood, slightly salty, something like that, something a bit different. I think would be really where we would see that going. But we grow on a hillside, which only I think 7 or 8% of the country's viticulture is on hillside. So ideally, we'd like to find another hillside site to go along with that. But for us, as was previously mentioned, the organic wine community in Hawke's Bay is tiny, and there's
you're going to have to do it yourself.
There's no option really to buy organic fruit in Hawke's Bay. outside of a couple of smaller guys that do it themselves. So.
Yeah, I guess to get more into it, because my question, you guys are certified BioGrow, right?
Yep.
Do you, and maybe it's because of the clay soils you're on and the fact that was that site established organically?
It's got a really long history of organic growing. The previous owner grew organically there from 1989. During the change of ownership, when Greg and his family initially acquired the site, they didn't really have the know-how to run the block, and they they leased it out, and it was run conventionally for a few years. And then in 2010, they reverted back to organics. So this run of organics hasn't been that long, but certainly the history of the property is but it could be long organic growth.
Hopefully those few years didn't destroy your whole soil.
Oh no, and they certainly didn't. The thing with conventional growing is that it's not an immediate degradation of property. Totally. It's that ongoing use of those chemicals that causes the damage, not one or two applications of it.
So I guess the thing that I've been thinking more about it, and I've just been read like Grasp the Nettle, and I know it's the right way to go. I'm pushing my growers to go in that way as well. I've even got one of Hawke's Bay's bigger, well, not bigger, but more known growers not far behind my house here, who's decided to dry farm and not weed spray for the Viognier this year. I think that's a step in the right direction. And but I think everybody's like a little scared. They don't understand. They hear these stories about, they tried to switch organic and, the crop load dropped and they had this problem, this and that. But from everything that I read and have experienced, is it's about your soil management, and that's why biodynamics are. I think so many people who don't understand it, even a lot of growers think like, well, there's organic, and then biodynamics is like organics on steroids or something. When actually, biodynamics is a way to achieve organic, and it's a way to just it's like a system to achieve not having to spray and do all these other and within that you can do tons of other things like cultivate the soil and this and that. So
the thing that people sort of don't understand about organics is that it's not the simple matter of just stopping spraying. It's a whole different mindset. It becomes a focus on soil health and vine health, and so when you take from a soil, whether it be a veggie garden, whether it be a vineyard, whether it be anything else, you have to put back. And that's a really important concept that people don't get with organics. They say, I stopped weed spraying and fertilizing for 3 years and my crop load went down. So, well, did you use any compost? Did you use any soil stimulants? Did you? No. Oh, no. So within organics, there's a lot of things you can still put on the soil.
Yeah.
The likes of seaweed, the likes of fermented fish. There's so many things that you need to be putting in. And when you're already starting from a depleted situation, you don't just need to put back what you're taking.
You need to make up.
You need to make up for what you're doing.
So do you guys compost out there, or how? Because I know it's a little bit of a gray area for how much you're allowed to do and what you're allowed to do and things.
Yeah, we don't use a lot of compost. We have reasonably heavy clay-based
because
soils.
That's kind of what I was getting at the beginning.
And so what we do is we do a maintenance, I guess, type of program where we green manure. So we sow crops. We had crops going this week, which will go through until the middle of December, and then we'll cut them down and turn them back in. And every year we do every second row of that. So every 2 to 3 years, every row's getting a crop turned back into it. So that helps with our organic matter levels. And then from there, we are basically running a biological system. So it's all about feeding the microbes in the soil so the microbes work better and more efficiently in breaking down that organic matter to release what the plants need. We still do use not fertilizers, but the things like guano, like bird poo as a phosphate source and things like that. So there's, and lime.
things that aren't
to
going
help
to
with the calcium.
They're going to do the job and not detriment the system.
Yeah, and it's I mean, we do a lot of work on soil testing, so we test our soils and we figure out what we, in an ideal world, they'd look like and how we can take small steps towards it. We never try and fix it in a year. It's just a conscious decision to, okay, this is what we need to work towards. Might change the decision on what plants we put in the next year in the green manure crop. And then when the green manure crop is turned in, it's then in the autumn, it's re-sown back into a legume-based permanent cover, which we then mow with a side-throwing mower, and it throws the cuttings under the vine. So that acts like a little bit of a mulch, a little bit more nutrient. And, so the system we run, I always tell people it's organic by default. We use a lot of the biodynamic preparations, and I use the moon a lot, but I would never claim to be biodynamic.
Yeah, well, I think it's I get what you're saying. I think one of the things that got pointed out to me recently was there's some people out there making some false claims, unfortunately, which doesn't help guys like you who are doing all the real work and everything.
Yeah.
And then there's also people out there who, like Atarangi, who's doing all that kind of stuff, but just aren't certified and have been doing it that way for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And just because it's the right thing to do, and they've realized over time that it's the best way to manage it, and they get the best crop, and so
yeah,
I think more and more, we come up with these. I'm not saying certifications are wrong or anything like that, but it is a lot for consumers to swallow, and they're just like, what am I looking at, and what's this certification? I don't understand this, and you can't add any sulfur for organic stuff to the U.S., but you can to a degree in New Zealand, but there's all these different things to get your head around. But the one advantage we have nowadays is we have the internet, and we have an ability to tell our story through our wines. And just be honest and say, this one's conventional, this one's, we're doing it as close to organic as we can, but then this is why. And, there's plenty of people out there, particularly when you're only making so much wine and you have people that are reaching for your wine, that they're going to do the research and read about it,
Yeah, no, I commend anyone who's doing anything that gets them even towards sustainability. Sustainability is a great first step.
Yeah,
it's not the be all and end all in my opinion, but it's a great first step towards having less impact on the land. What really frustrates me is the people who claim organic status without being certified, and then say, "Oh, we're too small; we can't afford to be certified." That's just absolute rubbish. If we can do it at 8 hectares,
totally.
Anyone can do it. It's not that expensive to do. You get audited every year. You get, some kind of authenticity in what your claim is. And I think that's really important. I know there's a lot of people out there in the New Zealand industry who are anti-certification. But what other way do we have of guaranteeing to the customer? Otherwise it's your word versus mine. And I think that's just too hard, and in 95% of cases that word is true, and what these growers are doing is organic without being certified, but it's the 5% left over who jump on the bandwagon that kills it. And the only way to stop that 5% jumping on the bandwagon is by saying, to claim organic status you have to be certified.
Yeah, well, certainly you don't. Yeah, that's crazy talk if you're trying to claim it,
Oh, there's plenty who do.
Yeah.
There's plenty of utes driving around Hawke's Bay with some claims on them that you'd that you'd dispute quite a lot if you actually had a look at their spray diaries.
Yeah.
So and all it does is just
waters down the idea.
It waters down what we're doing.
Yeah, totally.
Because we have an organic audit that they to audit the vineyard, the winery, because we make the wine off-site under sub-licensee, plus our exporting organic status, and they say that should be a full 8 to 10 hour day for that audit, and ours last 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because we're just so far away from that line. We don't push the line. And, we are, as I said before, organic by default. What we do is my system is just built off what I think is the best for the soil. with the theory: happy soil, happy vine, happy grape, happy wine.
Now, and I got to think too, like your first year is probably a longer audit, and after that you're like, well, I just know what I'm, I know, it's probably more paperwork shit than anything.
Yeah, it is. And then now I know that scares people, the stuff now, but the BioGrow, I'm not sure about assure quality, but BioGrow now is almost all online. So getting permission to use anything, which you need prior to using anything in the vineyard or the winery, you do by logging on. You go into your portal, you click on what you want, you put the reasons why in, it goes away, and as long as it's a certified product, your permission is instantaneous.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to do anymore, and I think that part of it puts people off, and I think that 1970, 1980 vision of organics also puts people off, which I also don't agree with. Organics is not doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's organic.
It's organic because I haven't touched it for 3 years. That's not what we want to build the organic brand on.
No, I think if anything, you're in your vineyard more. You're doing more proactive. You're not just like passing through with a spray and then see you later or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never sprayed weed spray in my life on a vineyard, to tell you the truth. But I imagine you tick along quite nicely doing 2 rows at a time on a quad bike or a tractor at 5 or 6 k's an hour or something. I've just finished our undervine cultivation, which has taken me 50 hours to do 8 hectares. It's
work.
It's work, man. And it's looking at the back window the whole time and getting a sore neck, and so it's the skeptics would say, well, that's way more tractor use. Look at the diesel you're burning and that kind of thing. And I think that's all valid points when it comes to organics. I had a
gotta get a horse, man.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to do that, but we're doing a native regeneration project in the gully of our place at the moment, and I'm happy that
I think that's what it is. The full picture. It's like, okay, we're going to burn some extra diesel, but maybe we put some solar in, or something. And we make it up another way, and again, it's about just communicating that. And
it's the consciousness of it. It's the fact that I know that I've used that much diesel, and it doesn't sit well with me, but it has to be done.
Yeah.
So you have to make that up in other ways.
Yeah, totally.
And I had the Natural Wine Festival last year. I had a disagreement with someone about mechanical harvesting, because if you mechanically harvest your fruit, you can't go in these natural wine shows because they consider that to be an unnatural process. And I said, well, but surely if we look at carbon credit situations and you look at the same amount that would take us 7 or 8 hours to harvest with a harvester, because we do machine harvest the fruit that goes into the supernatural wine, that would take 5 days of 20 pickers to pick that same volume of grapes, and you look at how much diesel you use and look at
to get them there,
to get them back, blah, blah, blah. And then when you get the fruit back to the winery, it's got to go through the destemmer where it comes out destemmed from the machine. And, the machine runs for 7 hours compared to a truck every day and the tractor every day and blah, blah, blah. I said, I think you'd find that machine picking is actually less of an impact as far as carbon goes than hand picking that volume.
Yeah.
And they said to me, but this is about being natural, not carbon neutral. And I just thought, that's so short-sighted.
Well, what is natural?
That's a whole nother discussion, what is natural, but that's their definition. And I just kind of thought, how can that be that you can, as long as you tick these boxes, you can call yourself natural with no consideration for the actual impact of your business?
You're not seeing the forest through the trees. I think there's certainly some political arguments these days going through like that, where you're being pedantic and you're looking at an issue from the wrong direction, and it's like, well, let's not look at it this way. Let's look at it scientifically and as a whole.
Yeah, and then if you can't use a machine harvester, can you use a machine trimmer?
Yeah.
Or do you have to do it with secateurs?
Exactly.
Can you use a press in the winery?
Yeah.
Because that's using power.
Yeah.
And that's not traditional.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's a new piece of technology, which, if anything, we should be using all this great technology to achieve lower carbon input and to achieve
and these
more
machines
efficiency.
these days are phenomenal.
Yeah.
The fruit that you get out of them is amazing. And, it certainly doesn't phase me in the slightest using a machine picker when I'm calling my wines what we call them.
Well, put it this way: we're all trying to make great wine, and say you had, they've come out with these new blowers that come through, and they just blow all the leaf and all the spores and all trash, and you tell me that that's worse than coming in with a horse and spraying or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's that's an extreme example, but like you want to
on that theory, if they say that that's using technology, then as you say, we all need to be using horses.
Yeah.
And we all need to be destemming the grapes by hand to be able to call them natural.
Yeah.
So I mean they have to set those guidelines for those natural wine fairs, and I totally appreciate that. And you can argue with which sulfur level they should use, blah blah blah. But that figure's just got to be stuck in the sand. That's just, it is what it is. But the machine harvesting thing really,
that's a weird one.
lit my wick.
Yeah, especially because you're talking about. I think like, I don't know. Sometimes I might be a hippie at heart, but I think there's definitely some hippies can be Nazis, you know what I mean? And you're just like, they see a big machine and that looks all modern, and they just don't see the warmth in it or anything. But it's just different strokes for different folks, and it's like we're trying to achieve the best result to be, to not use as much energy, and we're all talking about saving this planet and everything.
And maybe if the whole industry agreed to pay us, $3 extra per bottle.
Yeah.
and still sell the same volumes, maybe we could handpick it.
Well,
but the wine goes to a price point, which is fixed.
It could be working in a different direction with some of the other. I mentioned politics earlier, but some of the other things going on in New Zealand, and particularly Hawke's Bay now, with water conservation, with I think the weed spray thing is the clock is ticking. Everybody knows it, and you're just putting your head in the sand if you're not trying to come up with a new way. The pressure bombing with the water, the irrigation is like, that was so evident how out of control irrigation is probably in New Zealand as a whole, and it's. People are just they're just denying it for what is inevitable, and it's like, we can do this. We can be smart enough to figure out a way, Certainly, I've seen some, in the 10 vintages I've been here, I've seen some amazing pivots and changes and quality upticks and all that kind of stuff, and, machinery and innovation and all this. And it's like, we could, if the industry just took their head out of the sand and just decided, like, we know weed spraying's bad. Like, what can we do? And I think there's a little of that conversation going on. Yeah. But there's definitely some old timers dragging their feet and everything,
Yeah, and Hawke's Bay is most evident for it. I went to the organic conference a couple of months ago, and it was almost embarrassing the level of organic uptake in Hawke's Bay. Most of the rest of the country is, that 8 to sort of 12% of the industry. With an aim of being 20% organic by 2020. Hawke's Bay is, I think, about 2.5%.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that. It's an old industry here. For even though New Zealand's a very young country, this is the oldest wine region, and there's just it's just the way some certain people are doing it.
Yeah, and the way the industry was established here was at a time when the farmers, or what became viticulturists, had been brought up through those 50s and 60s period when, everything was going to be saved by the spray. Yeah. Oh, you have a problem with that fungus? Well, we've got a spray, a systemic spray now that you can spray on. It'll stick in this vine and you'll never get that disease again. And that's how they were brought up, Spray that grass there and it'll die for weeks, months. You only have to spray it twice a year and you'll never see grass on that at all. And they just went, awesome.
Yeah.
But, machinery and technology has come so far now to help us deal with those issues without using those things, that it's so evident to the likes of you and I, and that our, get-togethers we have with people more in our generation, everyone is interested in organics. Everyone is at least keen to
do it a better way. Yeah.
Do it a better way, But you talk to that older group.
Did I show you that weed eater thing the guy from Italy showed me that he's developed with a company?
No,
he was studying at Plant and Food. He was a guy from Friuli, and a ridiculous hardcore metal fan, viticulturist, awesome guy, crazy dude. Not my kind of music, but good.
Whatever floats you.
Yeah, sure, go for it, dude. But it was so sensitive. There's a video on YouTube of it. It was. It was just ripping up the weeds underneath, but it was so sensitive it was pulling back on even baby vines. Mm-hmm. So it was like, that's got to be a matter of time before something like that can come along.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about the technology making it so much easier for us now, And when they first started trying to get away from systemic herbicides, they were using these blades on the front of tractors that it was up to the driver to swing in and out of vines in it. They were losing 10% per pass kind of thing, and everyone just went, this is too hard. Yeah. But you look at the hydraulic sensors on these bits of equipment now, and they're amazing. And it's just going to get better.
Well, and those companies will. They'll adjust. It's like any corporation. People think like corporations are bad, or which they can be, because they certainly can be soulless at times. But they also will go to the wave of the people and the money. So if the industry
they've got massive R&D budgets,
and so if the people say like this is a problem we have across the range in Hawke's Bay, we need to do it. And again, there is some of that going on. Like I mentioned trash blower, whatever you want to call it. There's some really cool stuff that can go on the pelunks and things that are, and leaf heaters and stuff. Which again, I've leaf plucked for entire summers, man.
Yeah.
on Giblet Gravel's vines that probably didn't even have as much leaves as some of this stuff in the triangle.
Yeah.
And it was, it was rough. Where these machines can come through and do, an 80% leaf pluck in hours,
Exactly, yeah.
But
you only have to look at the difference, as we were talking about before, with the machine harvesters. Yeah. Look at the first ones, they brought in half the vines with them. Now they're picked and can be optically sorted and put in your bin with nothing. Well, not even a leaf.
At Paratua this past year, because we have like a first generation pelunk from like 06 or something, and the guy there is an awesome mechanic, and he's kept it alive, and it is still good for trimming and all that kind of stuff. But harvesting, you're ripping up vines and everything. It's crazy, the thing, So we decided, we trialed the newer harvesters on some of the blocks, and it was like the time and the result was like just a no-brainer. So
that's in 10 years.
Yeah.
Imagine what it's going to be like in another 10 years. Imagine how good the sensors on these bits of equipment are going to be in another 10 years.
That's crazy.
And they'll probably be GPS driven. You won't even have to sit in them.
Yeah.
You'll just have it ticking away, cultivating under your vines while you're at home sleeping. It's going to be awesome.
Have a beer,
Yeah, totally.
Coffee, mate? Sure.
Totally. But, it's and I think as more of that technology comes on board, there will be more people who are keen to try it, because they, it's that old mentality, I tried that, 10 years ago and it didn't work. So, well, you just can't say that in this industry, because things are moving so quickly.
Well, it'll hit. What's happening now, and what we're seeing with like the water conservation order and the market itself for wines is it'll start hitting people in the pocket, and that's when they'll adjust quickly.
Yeah,
and there's some younger brands, and then give credit to George Fistanich, who's trying to go 100% organic, and I think by 2020, right? He's trying to do it by then as well. And I ran into him at an event, and I didn't want to directly quote him on Twitter, but I'll roughly directly quote him here, because he said to me, point blank, he goes, we were unsure, but we knew we had to fight it. And the first few years, some of our vines definitely took a dip in output, but by far, our organic blocks are our most resilient, and the best fruit's starting to come off of there now. And I was just like, well, that's pretty promising to hear from the third or fourth biggest winery in the country, So,
yeah, and I always tell people that converting a vineyard from conventional to organics is like taking a junkie off drugs.
Yeah.
For those first couple of years, the vineyard, or in the junkie's case, the body, just goes into this massive decline where it's just fighting everything and it's struggling, and it goes into this really weak stage. And it happens in the vines. You see for those first 2 to 3 years, the vines can really struggle and wonder what the hell's going on. But as you come out the other side of that, what they turn into is stronger, more resistant, higher cropping. Well, not higher than the conventional, but higher than they do go through that period.
Well, they're probably cropping properly, and you probably have less work to do to thin them.
And it's amazing how many people say to me, I trim my block 3 times a year, and it costs us this much to crop thin down to this level, but I don't want to go organic because then we'll get that level of fruit. And they're the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So it'll save you 3 trims and the fruit thinning, though.
Yeah, well, that's what that water pressure bomb thing too was showing. Is,
But it's the look. People see that vine that's just reached the top wire in a whole season. They go, "Ooh, that's unhealthy."
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, if it hits the top wire in the season, it's like, that's perfect.
Well, look at all those vines. I haven't
had to trim it.
Look at those vines in Barolo and or in Piedmonte and Bordeaux. Even Bordeaux, they're not like huge, big, vigorous vines. And granted, we probably get a little more rain
and younger soils,
soils,
more
and
fertile
all that.
soils, but we way overwater them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We way overwater them.
Yeah, so we're back recording now. That's the modern, the beauty of modern technology. As we were discussing, that we can pause this, and we're not on live radio. But speaking of podcasts, one of the things I was going to mention is, if you haven't heard it, and for people listening out there, there's, probably my top 1 or 2 favorite podcasts is Radiolab, which comes out of New York, and they just do some amazing pieces. Some of it, a lot of science-based stuff, but some political stuff and things like that. But it tends to sit off into this area that, I think you understand why it's called Radiolab, because it's in this experimental, very progressive state of things. And I was in the winery working last year, and I listened, and I almost dropped like a barrel when I was just listening to what they were talking about. They had this woman on, and I'll find you the episode and send it to you, because it's so important to what and mind-blowing to what you're doing. It was a woman who, I think she was in Oregon or Washington State, whose family was in forestry. She got like a PhD in forestry or something, and so her job within that company, her family company, was replanting forest, and the idea that you don't replant with all the same tree. You mix it up, and that actually benefits the health of the whole forest, as if you have which is simple stuff that isn't that crazy. But when she started diving deeper into it, she started really looking at the microflora and everything in the soil, and it was just mind-blowing stuff, like the communication under the soil. So the type of stuff that they kind of knew some of this stuff existed, but they were actually starting to somehow track pulses for, if there was a bug at one end of the forest starting to attack the trees. By the time it got a third of the way through the forest, the trees had somehow changed their sap flavor to be a little more bitter, so that the bugs didn't like it. And you're just like, what? And all these things about,
mycorrhizal fungi, man.
Yeah, and they were just like, there was this one spot where bears would always come and eat salmon, and they would find traces of salmon in trees like 100 meters away, because there's a symbiotic relationship where they're mining minerals under the ground for the trees, and the trees are giving them back like sugars and things. And carbohydrates, and it was just like, what the and the cool thing that she said was, when you actually like zoomed out on a forest, it looks like a brain underneath the whole forest.
Yeah, mycorrhizal fungi are an absolute mind blower. I mean, the way that they work and the way they connect under the soil
it's trippy,
phenomenal.
It's like psychedelics, man. It's like it's like you're just like, what the hell is going on,
Yeah. And that's when I mentioned earlier the biological system, that's what it's about. It's about feeding all of that stuff. It's about encouraging its growth. And we use cultivation for certain things, and that's not ideal for it, but we use it moderately and only when we need to because of that as well. But you pick up a handful of soil from our vineyard and it is alive.
There's a lot of dead soil if you look around.
Yeah, there really is, and it's not just the top. It goes deeper than that. As the grass dies and is replenished by itself or mowed or anything, that organic matter that breaks down on the top of the soil brings all those bugs up into that topsoil area and turns it into soil. And if you haven't got any of that there, the life goes, and it's really sad. A vineyard I pass every day has a grass strip between the rows of about 30 centimetres. Their weed strip is 2.5 meters under each vine, and it makes me cry, man.
Yeah.
It really upsets me because it's, they're obviously doing it because they just don't.
They don't want to work.
They don't want to mow. They don't want to. They don't want to do any of that stuff.
No.
And this is an incredibly vigorous vineyard, and it's huge canopy, and I just think even if they were to grow something under there, put some clover down or put something down there to create a little bit of competition, they'd probably find that they'd have to trim once a year instead of 5 times or whatever they bloody do. It's incredible there, but it's just different mentality. I'm not anti-conventional growing as such. I don't like the concept and I don't want to do it myself, and I understand that it's it's every farmer's choice how they grow.
Yeah, but I think within that there's reasonable stuff, and I think it's pretty reasonable to say like, man, probably shouldn't weed spray if I can find another way to do it by now. Sins of the past, that's fine. But there's probably different ways to do it now, and there's, like you said, there's solutions out there, and you should always be trying to get better.
Of course you should.
Yeah.
As soon as you stop progressing, you stop learning and you stop growing your minds. And
that's it. I don't know how people do it. I'm like, why are you in the industry, or why are you doing this? Because it certainly can't be doing it for money.
Yeah. You talk to so many people around Hawke's-Bay and they say, "Oh, I don't know what happened to my fruit. I shoot thinned it 3 times and I took everything down to 1 bunch of shoot and blah blah." Talking like the old 15 years ago, the theory was when our viticulture was so bad that we could only get 1 bunch of grapes ripe per cane. Our viticulture in New Zealand is so amazingly good now that you can allow the vine to ripen whatever the canopy allows. It doesn't have to be 1 to call it reserve. It doesn't have to be 1 bunch per shoot anymore.
No.
If you've got a big canopy, then give it 2, because it's actually probably doing it more harm than good taking it down to that one bunch. And all it does is it accelerates the ripening. And this year I saw it a lot where those blocks were riper than everything else when the first load of rain hit, and they just got wiped out.
Yeah. Wasn't ready.
It wasn't ripe enough to pick.
Yeah.
But it was ripe enough to get botrytis really badly. And as it turned out, a lot of other stuff did this year as well. But it's treating every piece of land the same as per Richard Smart's book or whatever is just the days of that are so far gone, and people just have to jump on board and assess their vineyard for what it is, where it is, what they've got planted, what rootstock they've got it on, and just change what you do to suit your vineyard. Don't worry about what the neighbours are doing, and don't worry about what everyone else thinks. You've just got to make it right.
Yeah, and I think the movement towards some more medium and boutique brands as well in Hawke's Bay will help that, because they're just going to learn from their site. And obviously you said younger winemakers coming along and seeing it in other parts of the world. They by doing vintages overseas and things like that, that'll help. But there is something to be said that Hawke's Bay for a while, the days of some big old wineries that were here that are defunct, McDonald Winery, blah blah, and this and that, and there was kind of like a big industry that crashed here, and then there's obviously some big players here now as well.
Yeah. I mean, we are learning here. Yeah. 2 years ago at the organic conference, I was the only person from Hawke's Bay, apart from a couple of the Villa guys who took their whole staff. Yeah. This year there were a few more, which is great. I was rapt. Yeah. To see some other Hawke's Bay people there. But still, this year there were more Australians at the conference than people from Hawke's Bay.
It's going off there. I was just there, and there's some really good wines.
But for the Australians to come over here in larger numbers than anyone went from Hawke's Bay,
it's not good.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, well, hopefully, I think, like I said, unfortunately, it's maybe not consciousness, but money and demand from the consumer, and
the demand's a funny one though with organics, I find, because
I don't necessarily think people are going to buy organic wine. I think it's more like the demand for quality, authenticity. So that'll push things more to I know for a fact the younger generation, and a lot of restaurants, I just saw a guy from a winery I mentioned earlier that I really like, and I won't say what it is because I don't want. But he just said the restaurants won't even let him in the door because he's a big winery, and there's a perception of, certain wineries that they're not authentic or something, And so that's what I mean by the market driving it. And I don't say they're reaching for organic necessarily, but they are reaching for a story, authenticity. Well, what they want to talk to you, they want to say, they don't. There's not, when I really got into wines 20 years ago when I started in my early 20s to reach out from, it was well, who's Cake Bread and who's Grigachills and who are these winery and who's these famous Bordeaux producers and all that. And that's not like that with younger drinkers now. They're just who's this interesting. And it's not necessarily I want an organic wine or I want an orange wine or anything. There's some of that and there's interest there, but there's also just what's this story and this interesting wine from this weird place and this guy and this Armenian wine that, or something that is, and this guy's a crazy dude and, but his family's been doing it for years, or this guy took a chance and he decided to put a vineyard in the middle of Oregon where they never thought grapes could be land, and I want to taste that wine and, tell the story. And that bleeds into, what's your story with just your brand, with your big company, what are you doing? And I think that's why somebody like Villa will continue to be successful internationally, is because they take chances with varietals, and then they take chances, then they're doing the organic thing and they're progressive.
For a big company, they are really interested in organics. They're really interested in the latest piece of technology. And bang for buck wise, their wines are awesome. And I'm not anti those kind of companies, because those kind of companies have got New Zealand wine into markets we could have never dreamed of 20 years ago. By mainly through Semyon Blanc, obviously, but an ins and in, as far as I'm concerned, totally. and they broke markets for the rest of New Zealand that more than we can count. And I have a lot of respect for that.
And I still have tons of friends who will email me or text me and hey, I found this wine, and it'll be XYZ giant winery brand from New Zealand. What do you think of that one? And I'm like, good start. Just start there, dude. Have some of that, and then we'll get you something else a little soon. But go for it, man. And it's $10, and who cares?
Whatever introduces them to it, man. I think we really, the brand of New Zealand wine needs to really get behind each other, and the fact that us small guys support those big guys in that way, it'd be nice to see some reciprocal support, rather than, oh, there's a little guy, let's crush him, it's, I think the time right now in the New Zealand wine industry is so exciting.
Yeah, it is.
There's so much going on, and there's so many people finding their feet, and there's so many markets now that are accessible to New Zealand wines, and we've found, especially in the States, that the Marlborough Semyon Blanc spot on most wine lists now is no longer does it need to be from Marlborough. It is a New Zealand Semyon Blanc.
Yeah, totally.
Which, for us, when 80% of our production is Semyon Blanc from Hawke's Bay, we're really up against it.
I'm on the team
10
too,
years
man.
ago. Yeah, but now it's like everyone's so much more receptive to it, and the amount of people who I've met at tastings who go, sorry, I don't drink Semyon Blanc, so we'll just try it, and I'll see if I can change your mind. And they taste it and go, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because we don't do it like they do down there, and as I said before, I've got a lot of respect for what they do down there, but people who grow in Hawke's Bay and try and make it look like that,
no,
it's just why do that?
No,
Hawke's Bay Semyon Blanc is so delicious.
That was the first thing I discovered when I moved here, that people were like, and I always tell people that, I was like, oh, this is a little hidden secret about New Zealand wine is, domestically people like, I always talk to people the first 6 months I was here, and they're like, well, if I'm drinking Savvy, I like a Hawke's Bay one, and that passion fruit. And a little, I think it's food friendly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's just slightly less acid forward, and it's slightly more approachable.
But still New Zealand,
but still cool. New Zealand, and still very Semyon Blanc,
Yeah.
And I think seeing that in the world is so encouraging, and it's that classic case of Marlborough Semyon Blanc has opened that door for us. And once people like or trust that brand, they then start looking outside of that, and I think that's why I just think it's such an exciting time to be in the industry. I mean, our little 8-hectare vineyard now is in untold states through the US. Canada's going gangbusters. The owner's in China at the moment doing his thing over there. It's in Hong Kong. It's in the UK. It's in probably 10 or 12 countries through mainland Europe, and this is just our little...
It's crazy.
8-hectare vineyard in the Tukitook Valley, growing Semyon Blanc. It takes a lot of hard work, and I'm not meaning from me, I'm meaning from Greg, the owner.
He's out there
on the road, and he's doing it, and that's, and I think I see the mistakes so often in small wineries in New Zealand where they go, when we get an order big enough to justify us visiting a market, we will visit that market, and it's just
as soon as the door cracks open, you got to burst through.
Yeah, and you've got to go over there and crack the door open. Spend some money on trade shows, spend some money on travel. We spend a ridiculous amount of money on travel, but until we get that solid base of distribution, we're stuffed.
Yeah, you got to do it.
You've got to do it, and I would just really encourage that travel and meet and tell your story, because the story you tell never sounds as good as when it comes from yourself.
Well, let's end on that positive note, since both of us have to go pick our children up. And we got through nearly an hour there, so that was good.
Yeah, cool.
And thanks again for doing it. I think... we'll have to get... I do want to say on the record, I need to get an updated photo of you, because the old one I have is like the most pixelated one of the lot. So I'll be hunting down
we can do that.
A new photo of you.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, man. What'd I tell you guys? Hayden, what an interesting dude. I mean, we probably could have talked for another half an hour at least. As he pointed out afterward, we didn't really even get into his other projects, which I mentioned in the intro. I think I'll be speaking to Hayden again in 6 months' time or a year's time just to see what's going on with him. I hope he's a regular. Again, a curious, interesting guy. So thank you. As always, sponsored by DecibelWines.com. Use the promo code DBPodcast to all caps. I think that matters. To get 10% off all your orders. And yeah, Australia, keep an eye out. New Zealand, we got a new distributor here. We're seeing the wines all over the show now. Here we go, guys. Cheers.